Hilchas Schirus Perek Shleisha Aser. HaBehema Yicheles Kol Zman Sheyoyse Begeduli Karka. While the behema is working on Geduli Karka, so the behema is Yicheles Bein B'mechuber Bein B'tolish. And the Shulchan Aruch has brought down its comparison to a peil. That a peil is Oichel Begeduli Karka, Bein B'mechuber Bein B'tolish. So Al Derech Zeh behema is Oichel Bein Begeduli Karka, in Geduli Karka, Bein B'mechuber Bein B'tolish. The Gemara compares the peil to the behema. And that's this din. Now the difference is by a poil, the din is that while he's working in Tolush, he's only oichel while he's working, and not when he finishes working. When he's working b'mechuber, so then fakert he only is oichel when he finishes working. Mashenkin a behema is eicheles bein betolush bein b'mechuber while he's working. Is nacham a behema eicheles kol zman shueise b'geduli karka bein b'mechuber bein betolush. And also, v'yicheles mimasui shal gaba achatia pirekas. So if you have a behema, let's say, that's fearing a masui, so the din is that the behema could go ahead and eat from the masui shal gaba, stick up his head and eat from its back to be able to eat mimasui shal gaba. Abubulvad shalitul biyadi v'yachilena. Says the person that owns the behema, let's say he's fearing the masui for somebody, so the behema is really working for this masui. So the behema is allowed to eat from the masui, but the person is now allowed to go ahead and take from the food which is on top of the behema and be meichel to the behema. So that's his din. A behema could eat from geduli karka bein betolish bein mechuber while it's working, and also when a behema is transporting items, so he's allowed to eat from the food that he's transporting. But on the other end, the bala behema has no right to go ahead and take from the produce that's on the back of the behema and give it to the behema, to his behema to eat. That's the din of the right of the behema to eat. Halacha beis, kol ha'bnei behema melechel b'shas melacha. Someone that prevents a behema from eating while he's doing work is leika. Shenemar lisachsim sher b'dishay. And that din is echad asher ve'echad kol minei behema v'chaya bein tmeim ve'in terim. So the slavdav kasher, there's a din lisachsim sher b'dishay. Any animal while it's working, you're not allowed to prevent it from eating. Ve'echad adayish, rabdavka the working of threshing, ve'echad adayish, ve'echad shar kol ha'malacha shel geduli karka. V'linemer sher b'dayish ela beheva. So there's a sher b'dayish is a regular thing. The behema is threshing. So you say the Torah says lisachsim sher b'disha, but lavdavka sher it really means any animal, and lavdavka b'disha it means any type of work. Now so there's a din of lisachsim sher b'disha, and a person that's chosim sher b'disha is Evar and Alav, he's Leika. Now, V'hachoisim is Hapoil, someone that's Choisim is Hapoil, he knows he has a Poil work for him, and he puts a muzzle on him that he shouldn't be able to eat, he's Potter. So there's a Isser to prevent the Poil from eating, because there's a mitzvah to let the Poil eat. But on the other, in this lav of Lisachsim Sher B'dishay, doesn't apply to a Poil. Now, Echod HaChoisim Eisa B'shas Malacha, whether B'shas Malacha he put a muzzle on it, he put the muzzle on the behema first, and then and then he went and did malacha with this behema which had a muzzle on it, and nachmer the behema was working and it didn't have a muzzle, and he through his voice he screamed at the behema, prevented the behema from eating. So normally we say that the lav sheni ma'isa in leikanov, and talking about it is a lav sheni ma'isa. But since through his voice he caused it to do a ma'isa nose to close its mouth and not eat, so therefore this akima svasav, which caused that the behemoth should do a ma'isa, is considered a ma'isa, and therefore he's like. So therefore it's different than a regular lav shem b'ma'isa. It's nachamol. When a behemoth has a right to eat, when the behemoth is working on geduli karka bein betolish bein b'mechuber, the behemoth has a right to eat, and also when he's transporting. He also said the behemoth has a right to eat. Now, then there's a din that if you prevent the behemoth from eating, you're over on the lav. You're over on the lav. On any, not lav dav kasher b'dishay, any behemoth that's doing any type of work, b'geduli karka, you prevent it from eating, you're over on the lav. And lav davka, if you prevent it from, in other words, you put on a muzzle while it was working, but if you put on the muzzle before it was working, and then you worked with it that it had a muzzle, that's also lisachsim sher b'dishay. And also if you prevent it from eating through screaming at it. Socher behema v'chosma v'doshba. He hired someone's behema and he went ahead and muzzled the behema and it was doshba. So he's loike because he was able to lesachsim sher b'dishay, and also mishalm lebaylim arbas kabim leporu shleishes kabim lechamer. He also has to pay because he was mafsed the baylim. It should have been that the behemoth should have been able to eat, and lepel, since the behemoth didn't eat, so therefore the baylim lost out, so he has to pay the baylim. Now normally the din is that ein oleika mishalim. A person doesn't get malchus and have to pay. So why is it over here that he gets malchus and he has to pay? So that the Ram Taishazui Shemishas Mishicha Nischayv Mzinisa. In other words, the chiyuv mizaynus to happen b'shas Mishicha, and lepel, since he didn't fulfill that chiyuv mizaynus, he has to pay for it. So he's not paying for what he did. He's paying in order there was a chiyuv mizaynus that happened b'shas Mishicha, and that he has to fulfill. And ve'inei chayiv malchus, that's yodush b'chsuma. The chiyuv malchus comes later. The chayiv, when he's yodush b'chsuma, that's when the chiyuv malchus comes about. So Memela, therefore, there's no steer to the din of ein lodem leiko mishalim. So therefore, over here you have to pay the balabayas, and al derozeh you get malchus. So because the din is over here. The din is that a behemoth has a right to eat while it's oiseh b'geduli karka. That's the din number one. And then there's a isum of lisachsim sher b'dishay. L'chura, just to point out ashtikol ha'arim pshat that l'chura the din of lisachsim sher b'dishay b'pashtus is not a din that's connected to someone else's behemoth. A person has his own behemoth and he's being dosh his own items, and there's a issue l'sachs m'sher b'dishech. The Ram doesn't say that clearly, but l'chura it's pashut, like we'll see really behemshech if you take from a goy. So no, there's an issue of l'sachs m'sher b'dishech, which is not really so much between adam l'chamer. It's between adam and there's the issue. The Torah doesn't want that a person should be chosim m'sher b'dishech. So l'chura the seder advarim of these halachas is first of all. And the first halach when we're speaking about a behema ichelis kol zman sheyoisa b'geduli karka, the pashtus is talking about like behemshach to a poil. Just like a poil has a right to eat when he's working in someone else's kam or kerem. So al derezeh, if you have someone's behema, so that behema has a right to eat. A behema ichelis kol zman sheyoisa b'geduli karka. That's like a schus of the bala behema, just like there's a schus of the pail to eat. It's a schus of the behema or the bala behema that the behemoth should eat while he's doing work, and that extends that the behemoth is allowed to eat from what's on his back because he's transporting the item. So it doesn't give the right to the person that's the Baal HaBehemoth to be able to take from the things that are there and put it into the behemoth's mouth. But on the other end, it's a schus of the Baal HaBehemoth that the behemoth should be able to eat from these things of Gedul Karka. That's halacha aleph. Then there's another din. That if a person is minei a behemoth from eating, he was over on the Isser Lisachsim. And that Isser Lisachsim is when he's over when it's someone else's behemoth. Now there is when it's his own behemoth. There's an Isser of Lisachsim, Sher B'disha, which applies also to your behemoth. Then there's another thing, when a person is Seicher a behemoth and he prevented the behemoth from eating, so then he was over on Lisachsim, that's number one. And also, he took away food from the other person. Because the behemoth should have been able to eat, and the bala behemoth would have been nana. So therefore, he has two things. First of all, he has a chiyuv mezenis towards the behemoth, and therefore that he has to fulfill. So that's this din of arba kabel lepor or shleishes kabel lechamer. And then there's another din that he gets malchus because he was able on the lav l'sachsim share b'dishay, just like if he would have been chosim his own share. L'chura, it's like. L'chura, the Ram, you would expect the Ram should tight choice that if you chosim your own share, you also able. The Ram doesn't say it so clearly. Now Yisrael had dosh beparasi shel goy. A yid went ahead and was dosh beparasi shel goy. Is ever mishum bal tachsim. He was ever mishum tachsim if he was chosim the para. But the goy had dosh beparasi shel Yisrael. Is ein ever mishum bal tachsim. The goy doesn't have a isra bal tachsim, and the fact that the yid is letting the goy being dosh in an eifin of being chosim, that's not an isra minatera. Goy hadosh beparasi shel Yisrael einev mishum batasim. Now, however, Amal Goy chasoim parasi v'dushba. He tells a goy, go ahead and be chosim my para and be dosh with it. So that's an isser. That's an isser d'Rabbanan. You don't get malchus for it, but it's an isser d'Rabbanan. It's a general isser to give a goy something to do a dvar isser. In other words, that's the din of yesh shlichus la'akum midrabbanan l'chumra. So just like there's a din del gabi Shabbos. That Legabi Shabbos there's a din. You're not allowed to go ahead and tell a goy to do a dvar yisr, or you're not allowed to even tell a goy to. He gives a goy to do something, and he's going to do it for himself. but lepel, he's going to do it various. So you give him a piece of meat and you tell him, go cook it for yourself. So that then is also aser. Because lepel, you're giving him something and he's going to do it variser, and that goes into the category of yesh lichus la'akum midrabona l'chumra. That's this din. Nachamo. Amal legoy chasoim parosi v'dushba. Go ahead and be chosim my para and be dosh with it. So the balabais is not being nana from the avera that from the chasima that the goy is doing, and that's din number one. Yoshev lakoitz b'piyah. There was a koitz, there was a thorn stuck into the mouth of this behema, and v'doshba and lepel he threshed with his behema, and lepel the behema was hard for him to eat. It was because he had a thorn in his mouth, so mainly it was hard for him to eat. He wasn't eat. Or hirbitz lo arimi bachutz. He put an arimi bachutz, and the ari was making noise, so the behema was threshing, but he was afraid to eat. He was afraid of the ari. Or shehirbitz b'nomim bachutz, or the bno of the behema was bachutz, and the behema was able to hear the voice of the bno, and therefore also the behema wasn't eating. All these things which are causing the behema not to eat. He didn't actually muzzle the behema, but he caused the behema not to eat. Or hoisat smeya. The behema was thirsty, and he wasn't giving the behema water. So mele, because of its thirst, it wasn't eating. Or paras er al gabi adayish, he put a piece of leather on top of the kernels that he was threshing. So therefore he couldn't kadeshali teichel. So all these things called kizek yitzibei aser. You don't get malchus. So again, we had the first case was when he tells the goy that he should go ahead and be chosim my para and be doshba. So that's one Issur D'Rabbanan. It's an Issur D'Rabbanan of Amir Lakum. And then the other Isurim is not Amir Lakum. Although the other Isurim is he's preventing the lepel, the behema is not eating. He's not eating, but he's not eating in a way, not in a way of he's being chosim the par. It's in a different way. It was Yoshev Lokates and he was Dashba, or there was an Ari outside, or there was a Beno outside, or he was Tzmei, or he put a oil on top of the disha. All of these things were in a way that the behema wasn't able to eat, but not in a eifin that he was chaysim piyapara, and therefore it's also be'ein aloita. Now hoya hadavar she'esabei ra lebnei miyah. It was something the behema was threshing at something which the behema is going to eat. It's not going to be good for its stomach, for its system. Oy shoysa choyla, or is ill, and v'im teichel, if it's going to eat tatris, it's going to let out glolim. It's going to be something which is not going to be good for the behema. Is mutter lemana, so you're allowed to be minea the behema from eating these things. One shalik bida teira el al anosa, but it ain't in nenes. The pale the behema is doch not nenes if it's going to eat. So mele the Israel lisachsim shebedishe is don't prevent the behema from having the pleasure that it would normally have by eating. But if this eating is not going to cause it pleasure, it's going to cause it pain. So then the Israel of preventing it from eat doesn't apply. In the halacha before, where we had hirbitzba. Arimi bachutz, and the Ram says over there that it's osir, but it's ein aleika. The Kasem Mishnah says that the girsa shouldn't be hirbitzba, because when it's hirbitzba, he's talking against malchus. It's talking about ravitz. The ari came mielav. The ari came mielav, and lepel he was dosh with this behema. So the din is since he wasn't the one that was hirbitz the ari, so therefore ein aleika, just like Yoshev lekates, the case came mielav. So al derazeh rav ari is also when it came mielav. Halacha dal. Parashal Yisrael, Shahaya Hakoyin Doshba Betruma, or Ubetrumas Maisa Shalvade. So the behema, the kohen has truma, which he needs to thresh, and he rented a para from a yid. And lepel, the para of the yid is not allowed to eat the truma. You're not allowed to give truma to a para of a yid. A para of a behema, a para of a kohen is allowed to eat truma. Masha'enkin, a para of a yid by the kohen is not allowed to eat truma. That's din number one. And al derech ze upares hamahalchis atfua lefi shiyaret lehem aderech. In other words, they're not going on the tfua in order to thresh the tfua. They're going because they want to go a shortcut. And they're going over the tfua. They're yaret lehem aderech in order to pass over this field or this area in order to get to wherever the destination is. Is einer eva alein b'shem baltachsim in both cases. Say in the case of a kohen that's dosh betruma or betrumas ma'aser shalvadei. Now there is when yoret lemaderech, so the intent is not disha. Avol mipnei marasayin, in the case of truma, when the kohen is borrowing, is renting the behema shel Yisrael, and he's being dosh betruma, so the behemoth can't eat, but not everyone realized that it's a behemoth shel Yisrael. If name Marasayin, if hoyu dosh is betruma, Ma'aser Sheni is maybe ma'at meisi amin, and betel bikrustelim shebepiyam. You put it into the basket in their mouth, next to their mouth, so they'll be eating all the time, so there won't be a problem of them eating the tfuah which is on the ground, because they're eating the tfuah which is next to their mouth, and there won't be a need to muzzle them, because lapil, they're eating the tfuah which is in their mouth, which they're allowed to eat. Kids, they're not allowed to eat truma. They're allowed to eat chulin. So maybe you'll put chulin into the same min into the basket which is next to their mouth, and maybe you'll avoid having to muzzle them in order for them not to eat it. Halacha hey, hadosh b'ma'aser sheni shel demai. If the behemoth was being threshing, not ma'aser sheni, which is vadi dika ma'aser sheni, but rather ma'aser sheni shel demai, or ubetrumas ma'aser shel demai, or a beguli truma, is ever b'shum lisachsim. So even though midrabanon you have to be choishes, ma'aser sheni shel demai, you have to be paida, and al derez a trumas ma'aser shel demai is now to be eaten by a behemoth of a Yisrael, or geduli truma is also aser midrabanon, but nevertheless to a zor, but nevertheless lepel minatera, it's mutter to a Yisrael. So mele it's mutter to a behemoth shel Yisrael. So if you're going to be choisim this behemoth, so you're able lisachsim. Nachma, we're talking about something that only midrabanon not allowed to eat. A Yisrael is not allowed to eat. Minatera Yisrael is allowed to eat. So since minatera Yisrael is allowed to eat, his behemoth is allowed to eat. So therefore, there's an issue minatera of lisachsim on such an item. Halacha vov. Rishoy balabayis lahariv porosei ulesakvo kedei shetechel har bebeis shedoshim. So there's again a behemoth when it threshes. So we're talking about like you're using someone's behemoth to thresh, and that behemoth has a right to eat. That's like the way it started off the halacha, where the behemoth has a right to eat in someone else's tvuah when he's working for it. So the din is that the balabayis could go ahead and not give the behemoth to eat, and therefore the behemoth will be very hungry, and then when it's going to come to thresh, it's going to eat a lot. Rashoy balabayis lahariv parase, to not give the parah to eat, ula sakfa, and to make it work hard, kedei sheteichel har bebeis shedasha. So when it's going to come to threshing, and it's going to be this parah is going to be used to thresh someone else's kernels, so the behemoth will eat a lot. And also the rashoy hasoicher lahachila pki yomer, the person that's renting this parah, which has to let this parah eat during the disha, he could give him to eat pki yomer, which is like hay, bundles of hay. Kedei shalei techel harb min hadayish. In other words, he doesn't want him to eat a lot of the kernels of wheat, which are expensive. So he gives him pki yomer, which is very cheap, something like large stalks of hay, and therefore he won't eat that much from the diet. So the din is that when the behemoth is threshing, the behemoth has to be able to eat. How much will the behemoth eat? As much as the behemoth will want to eat. That's how much he'll eat. So the balabais of the behemoth is interested in the behemoth eating a lot. The balabai, the person that's renting the behemoth, is interested in the behemoth eating a little. So the balabais could do whatever it takes in order for him to eat a lot, which means to hunger out the behemoth and to be masagiv the behemoth. So the behemoth goes to work, it'll end up eating a lot. And the owner of the tfuah, the person that's renting the behemoth, could see to it that the behemoth shouldn't eat a lot. How is he going to do that? He's not allowed to muzzle the behemoth, but he could feed the behemoth other types of food. And therefore, when it comes to the dish, he won't be interested. Similarly, Rashoy balabais lahashkis peil and yayin. The balabais could give the pelim to drink wine. Once you drink a lot of wine, you don't have such an interest in grapes. And on the other hand, the Rashoy pelim lidbil pitel bitzir. They could dip their bread into tzir, which is the juice of fish, which is salty, and that'll give them an appetite. It'll give them like a thirst to eat anovim. So a person is allowed to do things. In other words, a poil is allowed to eat. So because the poil could see to it that he should be able to eat a lot. How does he make himself eat a lot? By eating something which will raise his appetite. And al derech the owner could do something to cause him to eat a little. So even though when we're talking about the eating aspect of the pail could do something in order to eat a lot, and al derech the balabais could do something in order to eat a little. But on the other hand, the pail has no right to go ahead and do malacha at night and go ahead and rent himself out by day. Or rent out his parad, or a thresh with his para at night, and then ulaskira shachris, and then rent it out during the day. Why? Because Lepel, he's renting himself out, and he doesn't have any care to work because he already worked at night. And Alderaz, he's renting out the behema, and the behema has no care to work because the behema worked at night. And again, he shouldn't hunger himself and does not eat, and therefore not have care to be able to work and give all his food to his children. Why? In other words, when a person goes to work for the balabayas, he's supposed to be able to work b'chol kechi. So if he worked the previous night, he's not going to be able to work properly. And al derech zeh, if he doesn't eat properly, he won't be able to work properly. Shari yikoshel kechi v'techlish daiti v'liyasim v'liach b'kech. So a person is those schusim that a pale has, which is to eat, he could see to it that it should have more of those chusim. Because he should have a bigger appetite. Masha'enke, and the fact that he has to work, he can't go to it and hunger himself out or work at night. Memela, when he comes the following day to work, he'll be tired. Just like the balabais is supposed to see to it, to pay the yoni exactly what he owes him. And when he's not to hold up the money, he has a chiyuv to pay him on time. The oni has to be careful not to be mavatul the melechas balabais. V'yibatul ma'ad bikan and ma'ad bikan. Whereas he'll take off a little time over here and a little time over here, and the end of the biyam, meitzer kol hayem b'meir, he's going to waste the whole day. Elechayev l'daktik alatzmi b'zman. He has to be very careful about the time. Shari yikpidu chacham al bracha reviyah shel birchas hamazon shel yivarech esa. Chazal said that he shouldn't. That there's the bracha reviyah. The original birchas hamazon is the first three brachas. Then they added the bracha vateva meitim, tzad aruge beita. And Chazal said that if a person is a worker, a person is a pale, doesn't say the bracha reviyah because he's being mevatel malachtish balabayis. So that shows us how careful you have to be for malachtish balabayis. That's as far as the amount of time is concerned. Then as far as how much effort is concerned, how much effort you have to do, there's not only you have to work a whole time, but the whole time you have to work b'chol kechi. Shari Yankiv, the Rebbe would many times said that, when you get bittul teira, there's the bittul teira of Zman and also bittul teira and echos. And if a person could learn more be'ion and with more strength and more havana, so if he's not doing it all havana, that's also called bittul teira. So there is over here. A person has to work the entire time, and he also has to put all the strength into it. Shari Yankiv atzadik amr ki b'chol kechi avadati zavicha. That he worked b'chol kechi. Not only he worked the whole time, but he worked b'chol kechi. The fichach notel schar zeis av be'elam hazeh shenamar vayifris ish meid. So because he worked b'chol kechi, and he was very ehrlich in his work, sayin zman and sayin b'chol kechi. So that caused that eventually that should be vayifris ish meid. Brich rachmona desayon.